Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about apologizing and the art of apologizing, the do's and don'ts, the benefits, the reasons for apologizing, the reasons not to apologize, and the way in which apologies can be received, and the science behind apologizing, how our body and our hormones and the neurotransmitters in our brains respond to us apologizing or not apologizing. And I thought about writing about this topic about a week ago, but I was watching Matlock, the new series of Matlock, and this quote stood out. Matlock said her partner, who right now they're having some trust concerns between the two of them, she made the statement of, sorry means if you can do it again, you do something differently. So her partner said, I'm sorry. And Matlock responded with, sorry means that if you can do it again, you do something differently. So basically she was saying to her, don't apologize for behavior that you already know that you are likely to engage in again, because that renders that apology somewhat invalid in those moments. And that stuck with me, and it drove some of the things I want to talk about today. And the first things I want to talk about is the reasons we apologize are just as important as the words we use to deliver that apology. So some of the reasons that it's important for us to apologize is when we know we've intentionally or unintentionally caused some level of harm or hurt to someone. Another reason you want to apologize is when you want to take accountability and ownership for your actions and for things that you know that you've done that, again, may have been hurtful or harmful to yourself or someone else. And another reason that it's important to apologize is that you fully understand why you are apologizing and you are committed to make the necessary changes in order for the necessity for the apology to no longer be needed. Now, there are some reasons we should avoid apologizing. We should avoid apologizing when we're not clear why we are apologizing, when we're not clear on what we're feeling sorry for. Some individuals have a tendency to simply say, I'm sorry, because someone has said that they've hurt them in some way, but they are not clear what they're apologizing for. And most individuals, when that happens, when they're apologizing simply because someone has made reference to them being hurt in some way, that apology sometimes is to, one, alleviate or to move past the situation or to get past the situation or to avoid any possible conflict moving forward. I've asked individuals specifically at times, like, when you said you're sorry, what are you sorry for? And if you've said you're sorry to someone and that follow-up question is what you're sorry for and you don't have an answer, it may not be an adequate time to apologize until you are clear about what you are apologizing for. It's also not helpful to apologize when your primary reason for apologizing is you are looking for a reciprocal response from the person that you are apologizing to. So you're apologizing in hopes of a person behaving in kind towards you. And that may not always be the case because that other person may not feel like there is anything they need to apologize for. And lastly, another reason that may not be the greatest reason for you to apologize is when it's not clear, again, what the apology is for. Because when you simply apologize and you have absolutely no clue what you're apologizing for, you're not sure what has to change in your behavior or in your interactions with someone else or in the behaviors of someone else around you, then those words become empty and those apologies can lose their value. So those are the reasons to apologize and the reason to maybe think about your desire or your need to apologize before engaging in that behavior. Now let's talk a little bit about the signs or the hormones or the neurotransmitters that are typically associated with apologizing. And I've looked at a couple different articles and the two hormones that tend to stick out, and it makes sense, are cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol is known as the stress hormone. So basically when you are feeling a negative mood or when there is a high level of stress, your cortisol has the potential to be elevated. And when you have engaged in behaviors that you have knowingly caused some level of harm or conflict or damage to someone else or something else, you may feel some level of guilt. You may feel some level of shame. You may feel some level of embarrassment, and that increases your cortisol level. So your stress levels may be higher. And when we apologize, we activate or we may increase our oxytocin levels. And oxytocin is known as the love hormone. So it's a hormone that's typically associated with us making connections, with us having those bonds with those individuals around us that we care about. So when you apologize, you are restoring or trying to restore the relationship you have with someone, or trying to repair a rupture or possible or potential rupture in a relationship. So you're trying to restore that connection. And then through that apology, the connection can be restored. It has the potential to increase your oxytocin level, which is more of those feel-good hormones as opposed to those stress hormones. So there is some science behind apologizing if you needed it. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the do's and don'ts of apologizing. So before I talk about the do's and don'ts of apologizing, I want to be clear in saying that "and I'm sorry" is great. However, "and I'm sorry" should come with an understanding of the harm or the hurt that has been caused by your action or your responses, as well as a willingness and an understanding to make the necessary changes or corrections. That is what an apology should incorporate. It sometimes can be a simple "I'm sorry." Some people are receptive of that, but I find that most people are more receptive of "and I'm sorry" that includes what you're sorry for and what corrections you're willing to make. So let's talk about the do's and don'ts. So be willing to acknowledge your behaviors. Be willing to make the necessary corrections. If you're willing to apologize for something, know that chances are there may need to be some corrections. Now, don't say "I'm sorry." Don't say "I apologize" unless you truly mean it. Because when you don't mean your apology, the willingness to make the corrections, the necessary corrections, are typically not there as well. And you're at greater likelihood of engaging in that problematic behavior again. So after a while of making the same apology without no changes in behaviors, those words start to lose their value and they start to become like empty words, and people become less receptive, and that accountability that you're trying to take in that moment is no longer valued. So don't apologize if you don't genuinely mean it and you're not willing to make the corrections, because you are going to be likely to repeat that problematic behavior. Be willing to make the corrections. Kind of like I was just talking about, there comes a point in engagement with individuals or engaging with people we care about that apologies are no longer enough, and people are less looking for an apology and more looking for changes in behaviors. So people are going to care less about the apology and are more focused on what behavioral changes are you making? What are you doing differently? What are you willing to do differently? People are going to focus less on your words and more on your actions, your responses, and your engagements. And lastly, do not let your pride and ego get in the way of you apologizing, even when you feel justified in how you behaved or responded. That sometimes is the hardest apology to make, is when you feel justified in how you responded or behaved, even though it caused some level of hurt or harm to someone else. Simple example, I love my family, love my friends. I don't genuinely like when people call me back to back because I'm going to assume it's an emergency. So when someone calls me back to back, it activates my cortisol level. So my stress level goes up and I'm sitting here trying to figure out, if I answer this phone, what am I going to have to do? Now, because over the years I've learned and I've had to deal with people calling me back to back, and when I answer the phone, it's, "Oh, I was just calling to see how you were doing." So now I'm activated, a little bit stressed, and they're just like, I was just calling. So I have let my friends and family know, like, if you're just wanting to call and check on me, if I don't answer the phone, instead of calling me back to back, just send me a text message. Get concerned if I don't respond to the text message. But if I respond, then I'm okay. But it never fails that someone will still call me back to back just to ask if I'm okay. Just to say, I was just calling to check on you. And so that's why my irritation came, because I have had that conversation several times with both family and friends. I am an 80s baby, so I am strong on the I want a landline back so people can manage their own anxieties about not having immediate access to someone else. So now when that happens, when someone calls me multiple times back to back, my response when I answer the phone is normally not one that's without some level of irritation. And no matter how hard I try, that irritation will likely be there. And I recently had a situation where someone called me back to back, someone that I loved and care about, and I responded out of irritation. And in that moment, I felt justified because I'm like, I've had this conversation several times, and I felt justified in how I responded. And I still apologized because how I responded hurt someone that I didn't want to hurt. You can feel 100% justified in how you responded and how you behaved, and you can apologize for the hurt or the pain that you've inflicted on someone else. And that also must come with maybe some changes in how you respond or how you engage. In this particular situation, what I've decided is I took the advice of another loved one, and I said that if I know that I can't control my irritation when answering the phone, I won't answer the phone, because I don't want to cause someone else to have a bad day. I don't want to purposely hurt someone else's feelings. So my apology came with an apology for how I behaved and hurting their feelings. But it also came with an understanding of behavioral change on my part to say that if I don't answer the phone, it's going to be because I can't manage my irritation in that moment, and I don't want to inflict pain on you. So even when you feel justified, sometimes apology is necessary. So don't let your pride and your ego and your justification of your behaviors and your responses keep you from being able to apologize and reconcile relationships where you know you've caused some level of hurt or harm. So what I hope you take from this video today is this. Apologizing is a way to build and repair hurt or harm or damage that you've caused in a relationship. It's taking accountability and ownership for your actions and how you behaved and how you've engaged with someone else. There are times when we need to apologize, and there are times when we need to not apologize. We need to apologize when we know why we're apologizing and we're willing to make the necessary corrections. We need to forego apologizing if the only reason you're apologizing is to avoid conflict or to appease someone else, and you know that your likelihood to repeat that problematic behavior is going to continue to happen. Because in that instance, you are going to start to damage your own words, and your words will lose value, and your desire to take accountability is not really taking accountability at that point. It's simply saying, I'm going to say whatever I need to say to move past what we're dealing with in this moment. And that typically doesn't help relationships or build relationships. And there are some do's and don'ts of apologizing. There are some reasons we need to apologize, and any apology that we give to someone needs to include both our understanding and our acknowledgement of our problematic behaviors and our actions, as well as what corrections we're willing to make. Not everybody is deserving of an apology. Not everybody is looking for an apology. But when it's necessary, be willing to allow space for that reconciliation. So maybe we can decrease that stress hormone and increase that love hormone or that connection hormone, so we feel more engaged and more connected with our environment around us. So, as always, I hope you take something from this video today that was helpful and informative. I hope it has been a learning experience. As always, please jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.